Thank you, Mr Chair, and I'm very pleased to be able to stand and take a call in support of the Veterans Support Bill and the amendment being put up by my colleague, the Honourable Phil Goff. This may seem like a small piece of legislation, but it is in fact a very important piece of legislation, and I, on a personal level, am very proud of the military involvement and contribution of members of my own family. My grandfather from Ruatoria served in the Navy in World War II in the Pacific. He was mentioned in dispatches for managing to dispose of a grenade that landed on board. He used to like telling the story. My nanny used to say that the real version probably involved a hell of a lot more panic and swearing than the version that we were told. But I'm very proud of my papa's involvement in the Navy in the Pacific. On the other side of my family, my grandfather served in the army in Italy. He was actually photographed when he was marching out in Auckland to leave for Italy. What he didn't know was that his photo was actually used as the recruitment poster for World War II in New Zealand, which was very ironic given that he was a committed pacifist. And when he got home was quite shocked to learn that his photograph had been used. But he served time in an Italian prisoner of war camp over there, and the impact that had on him, on his return, even though he died when I was 6 years old, so very young, I know that the impact on my family and on my grandparents was great from having their men leave and serve overseas. And my grandmother actually served with the Wrens up in Auckland. And she was mapping all the different shipping movements in the Pacific. So, and on a even more personal level, my great-grandfather was a medic at Gallipoli. And I was incredibly fortunate to be part of a speaker's delegation that involved Gallipoli on Anzac Day, and to stand at Chunuk Bair and to look at the trenches and to see what my great-grandfather saw when he came ashore at Gallipoli, and the huge challenge that lay before them was deeply moving. And I felt incredibly privileged as his great-granddaughter to be able to stand there honouring and commemorating his commitment and the commitment of his colleagues to our country on what was a tragic day, but a day which really forged a nation. So I come from a family that has had a long contribution to the military in New Zealand, of which I'm deeply proud. I also want to pay tribute to another great chief from the Eastern Bay of Plenty, and on the 17th of April, Doug Belsham passed away, and Doug Belsham will be known to a number of my colleagues for being a very passionate letter writer and someone who would come along to any event we were holding and talk to my colleagues about many of the issues facing veterans in New Zealand. He was the Eastern Bay RSA Welfare Officer for many, many years. I think it would be a conservative estimate to say that he helped many hundreds and hundreds of people, and although he was based in Whakatane, he actually supported veterans, ex-service people and their families right throughout New Zealand, and even some who are living in Australia. What always struck me about Doug was that in our many, many long conversations, it was his incredible grasp of the detail of policy and legislation relating to veterans and to ex-service people, and his immovable commitment to ensuring access to entitlements and assistance weren't eroded, and his phenomenal memory, which allowed him to recall details of pension claims going back more than 20 years. He was a renowned historian of military and political matters, and he is greatly missed. I was actually in touch with Doug in the months before his passing regarding the Veterans Support Bill that we're debating today. This is a bill that came out of a Law Commission review, but unfortunately has ignored a key recommendation of that review, as well as many of the submissions of veterans and the New Zealand RSA. That Law Commission review, Mr Chair, as my colleagues have said, was set up by the last Labor government, and it recommended that all war veterans put in harm's way in an overseas deployment should be eligible for a veteran's pension. The pension is in place of, rather than on top of, New Zealand superannuation, and it confers some small but important benefits to our veterans, such as a lump sum payment on death, community services card, and continuation of the pension if hospitalised. Most return service personnel who want to go on to the veterans' pension do not so because of the benefits, but because they see it as their country honouring their service. However, our veterans are only eligible for this pension if they are considered significantly disabled, or more specifically have a 52% higher impairment. For many years, veterans have been asking that this requirement be dropped, and this was a position that was endorsed by the New Zealand RSA. Unfortunately, this recommendation has been ignored, and the government has said that the recommendation shall not progress, quote, at this point in time. Well, that's all very well and good, but time is not on the side of World War II Korean, Mr Chair.
Moana Maki.
Thank you. Malayan and Vietnam veterans, time is not on their side, and as the years pass, their numbers are rapidly declining, Mr Chair. So the decision not to support this recommendation fails to answer a fundamental question, which is why should it be necessary to be significantly disabled to qualify for a veteran's pension? Mr Chair, this year we commemorate the centenary of the start of World War I. There will be many sincere expressions of gratitude for the service of our veterans. Surely we can do more to acknowledge the centenary and our veterans in a tangible way by extending their eligibility for a veteran's pension. That's why Labor is moving an amendment in this committee stage to remove the disability requirement. We are hopeful that the National Government will see the enormous symbolism in the small gesture, reverse their position and support the change. The cost of doing so is small, $11 million this year, declining to $8 million in 3 years' time. The message it would send, however, is not small. It is an incredibly important one. Labor has said we will adopt the Law Commission's recommendation to ensure all war veterans are eligible for a veteran's pension. The RSA National President Don McIver says it would be, quote, a real indication that the proud and dedicated service of our veterans, potentially with their lives having been put in harm's way, is recognised as warranting special acknowledgement beyond that provided to New Zealand citizens generally by way of superannuation. Mr Chair, a Labor government would do the right thing for our veterans. We will honour their service.
The Honourable Member. The time has come to leave the chair. This debate is interrupted. I shall resume the chair at 7:30.